This is from Lesson 2, Playing with Probability. Just like in Lesson 1, I'm going to go over some key concepts and some key definitions, and then I will give a little bit of guidance on this cool down right here. Lesson 2 was really about the two different types of probability that we can come up with. We can come up with probabilities just like we did in Lesson 1 by just looking at the total possible outcomes and the number of favorable outcomes, or the outcomes that we're looking for as well. So, for example, I think we talked about a number cube last time. Since we know the probability of rolling a 2 on a number cube is 1/6, because there's only one 2 on the number cube and there's 6 total numbers. That right there is what we would call a just expected probability, I guess. The other kind is experimental probability. So for this one, we would write it like this. The probability of rolling a 2 is 1 out of 6. Now, let's talk about experimental probability. Experimental probability is a little bit different. Experimental probability is probability that's estimated by doing an experiment, or sometimes simulating the experiment many times and collecting data about how often outcomes come up. For example, a radio show holds a contest in which callers are entered for a chance to win a ticket to a concert in town. The probability of each caller winning is estimated by considering previous similar contests and comparing the number of callers to the number of ticket winners. If a previous contest had 327 callers and 5 ticket winners, then the probability of winning a ticket can be written as P of winning a ticket. Well, there were 5 total winners the last time around out of 327 tickets. And if you divide 5 by 327, you get about 0.015. So if you look at that, and you remember, our probability is measured on a spectrum from 0 to 1, 0 being impossible, never going to happen, 1 being it absolutely will happen. 0.015 is pretty small. It's pretty likely that you won't actually win this contest. However, that does not mean it's impossible. We can also do experimental probability on other things like flipping a coin. I think I talked about flipping a coin in the last lesson, where if you actually do the experimental probability on flipping a coin, you're actually going to find out that instead of being exactly half and half, like if you flip the coin 1,000 times, you're not going to necessarily get 500 heads and 500 tails. You might get 520 heads. It might be slightly more likely that heads lands up if one of the sides of the coin is actually a little bit heavier than the other. But with calculated probability, there's 2 sides to the coin. Only one side is possible, so it would come out to be 1/2. But again, that's different from the experimental probability. So let's take a look at the cooldown. First of all, Forest Ranger wants to estimate the probability of catching a bass in a lake when using a special type of bait. Describe a process the ranger could use to estimate the probability of catching a bass in the lake. What kind of an experiment could you come up with? Or what other kind of data could you look at from the past that could help you figure this out? That's experimental probability. Number 2, one of the letters from the word recklessness is chosen at random. What's the probability of selecting an S? Well, in this case, you're just going to look at the word. How many S's are there? How many letters are the letter S? And you're going to take that, and you're going to divide by the total number of letters. This is not experimental probability. This is calculated probability. What's the probability of finding a vowel if you draw at random? Like if you took all these letters and wrote them on note cards and threw all these note cards in a bag, what is the probability that if you reach in that bag and pull a card out, that there's a vowel on it? Well, how many vowels are there? And in case you don't know, vowels are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, but A, E, I, O, or U. And then divide by the total number of letters. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, let me know.